Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video. Today today we're going to have a lot of videos today. In this video, I will be talking about the state of summoners for 3.13. So, the state of summoners, there's a lot of things we need to talk about, and there's a lot of things that we don't really need to talk about, and I'm going to try to keep this video as short and consistent or concise as possible to avoid wasting you guys' time. First, I want to mention the niche approaches that are untouched by the patch notes, or barely touched, that we don't have to worry about. First one is Arcali's Fang, for example. Zombies, melee skeletons, enemy weapon, Herald of Purity / Dominating Blow, Soul Rust, SRS, all of these things are untouched by the patch notes and are still very, 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 very good. There's only one side note about these, and that is that SRS do not have an aggro table. They cannot actually be targeted specifically by enemies. So when you're going into a 10 boss fight room like Maven, you might find yourself being overrun by them because your SRS might not be good enough to deal damage to kill them fast enough before they actually start overrunning you as the player. So SRS can be a bit tricky unless you go with a bit higher budget where they start killing the bosses very quickly. They have to walk around these, but ranged bosses will still target you. However, if you do have some side minions like Decoy Totem or zombies or something, anything to make sure you have some tanks actually soaking up aggro, then it shouldn't be a problem in the lower budget states. But SRS should still be very good. We can achieve 50 to 60 million shape DPS fairly easily, especially with the Harvest Crafts being available to us. But outside of that, those builds will be perfectly fine. The biggest downside from the updates is probably the small duration reduction on enemy weapon, which you'll barely notice anyways, since that's not a big problem. So we're going to talk about the more pressing things that we've seen in the patch notes, and we can start with golems. Now, Karen golems were hit by 20% less damage, and stone golems by 10%, which means that we might actually see some more flame golem builds being the main focus, and flame golems builds has always been very, very good. However, the golems were hit pretty hard with the ascendancy changes, and also the aura stacking to avoid these builds running around with a golem focused build at 90% all rest. I don't think we'll see that anymore. So there's a lot of damage reduction because of that, and as well as some defensive lack from not having 90% all resistance. That doesn't mean the build is bad, because that build was an extremely good version of a Golemmancer. Now, Golemmancer builds I think will still be a very good build to play, but it's not going to be as obnoxious as it's been in the past. Now, if you played Golem builds before and you'll do that in 3.13, you will definitely notice and feel the nerfs that is being present in the 3.13 patch. So that's my take on Golems. The other thing that we should mention is Bama. For those of you who don't know what Bama is, that is Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow. Now, we have a guy in the community called Prevalin. He's made insane versions of the Bama, and it's absolutely crazy how good you can make a Bama build. And the patch notes gave us CDR, which is cooldown recovery rate reduction to these abilities, making it even better. So Bama builds will probably be an insanely good build that I'm sure a lot more people than normal will play in 3.13 and moving forward. I'm personally not a big fan of the playstyle and the gearing portion of that build myself, so I'm not a big fan of it, but it is a very cool build and it's a very niche approach, and the only thing that happened was a straight up buff across the board because the lower damage increasement that we're getting from the Ascendancy of the Necromancer is not that much compared to the cooldown recovery that we're getting on both Blink Arrow as well as Mirror Arrow abilities. And this moves us over to other abilities that we need to talk about more in depth. But before I talk about that, which is the Spectres, of course, I do want to mention that you should hit that like button and subscribe for more content. The button's right there. Just fucking do it, all right? Thank you. Appreciate it. Jokes aside, I want to talk about the nerfs to Renewal and Rotten Claw. Now, Rotten Claw was brought down by 8% chance to impale. Now, this only affects certain builds where we actually bothered pushing up their impale chance. It's not a big nerf in most Impale builds. We barely even bothered going for Rotten Claws anyways. I think we picked up one of them, and it was still overcapping our Impale chance with the way we designed Impale-based summoner builds. I'm not a big fan. I'm not worried about the Rotten Claw nerf that much. However, the Renewal nerf was halved. Before, Renewal gave minions 10% chance to deal double damage if they had full HP. Now they will have 5% chance to deal double damage. Now that is massive. That is a huge, huge nerf in terms of damage output from the Renewal cluster jewels. However, it is a cluster jewel which mostly affects medium budget to high budget builds to tone down their high-end damage. Most of the summoner builds, or at least all of the summoner builds I create that are League Starter friendly, do not include cluster jewels except for 1 or 2, and those cluster jewels are not even large cluster jewels. There's like Blessed Rebirth to keep certain minions alive, like skeletons. And that's about it. So I don't think that's going to be much of a problem when it comes to the early stage league starts. Now, a question I've been having a lot recently is if I think that the nerfs to Spectres was justified or fair. Now, I want to tackle that question before we talk more about Spectres. And we have to talk about skeletons as well. So basically, my take on it is that I think it was very needed and it was a good nerf. However, the problem with the way they did it was instead of scaling or changing these balancing towards the medium budget and higher end budget builds, they did it towards all ends of it. This means that lower budget and league starter builds or people that are not experienced with playing these builds will encounter issues where the Spectres will be very squishy and dying a lot. You can still do a pure Spectre build, but it won't be as effective as it has been in the past. And you actually have to pay attention to the way you're scaling your Spectres to make sure that they actually survive in fights like Seers and Awakener 8, Uber Elder, or Conqueror fights and whatnot. And it can be very devastating if they start dying because it's a pure pain in the fucking ass to resummon them, right? That doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that it's not playable. Still among the strongest ascendancy classes and builds you can play in the entire game, like they mentioned in the Reddit post where Bex talked to the team, and they said the exact same thing I said. And yeah, that's just the case. But I think that the nerf is unnecessary towards lower budget and unnecessary towards newer players because of the way Spectres behave. Now, if they made Summoner Spectres a bit more easy to resummon, I don't think this would have been a problem. Such as like an ability where you would save a certain Spectre and then another ability to summon that Spectre with a big ass cooldown would have been a fair balance change to make them this squishy in the early stages. Damage-wise, I don't think it's going to be a problem. We could achieve very high numbers, but we have Spectres that have been used like slave drivers that are very, 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 very good. That will be now more toned down to a more reasonable level on the early stages without cluster jewels and without Megatech gear, but we also have harvest crafting available, making this very easy for us to scale up their efficiency. So I'm not too worried about it personally. So this brings me to the next stage. What do we do to solve the issue when it comes to Spectres? And the best solution in my case has been to look at the Lich Queen build guide. Now this will be linked in the description below. This is most likely going to be the League Starter build that I'll be playing with. I'm not going to go too in-depth with the build guide because I still have to update it. And I'll also make another video separately for my League Starter build. So the Lich Queen is a build made 5 years ago where the solution is to use skeletons and Spectres. And the reason we did so was because back then we couldn't really do a pure Spectre build, and the solution was to use one of the minions was supposed to be entirely oriented around clearing, and the other minion would be entirely focused on single target bossing. Now, in the past, that's always been a clear speed Spectre and use melee skeletons for bossing. Now, the patch notes gave us a pretty juicy, pretty damn juicy buff to Mage Skeletons, the Dead Reckoning, now giving the base damage 50% more damage to Mage Skeletons, as well as their projectile speed being doubled, making them very good at clearing. Now, this is really good. This allows us to use melee Spectres. Now, melee Spectres has always been pretty shit in terms of actual clearing, and then with the Dead Reckoning changes for Mage Skeletons, we can actually use Mage Skeletons in a 6-link chest piece and use Spectres in a minion-related helmet, which I'll have plenty of guides and we'll make more guides for how to craft very cheaply, and you use them in your helmet. Now, you can use something like Feeding Frenzy for the melee melee Spectres to help clearing, and then change that for Predator when it comes to single target, and still have your Mage Skeletons do the clearing in general. And that's basically how the build is played. But in the past, we've used melee Skeletons with ranged Spectres, but now that's going to be changed with these buffs, where we're going to use Mage Skeletons, which are going to be pretty goddamn cool, except the downside that there's going to be so many projectiles shooting, flying across the screen that you won't be able to see shit. It's like playing Frost Auto Scouts on steroids. So basically that brings us to the next topic, which is which fucking Spectres do we use then? Before we check the melee Spectres, I do want to mention the ranged Spectres that should be the top tier choices right now, and that is going to be Frost Auto Scouts, Artless Assassins for fire, and Redemption Sentries to some degree. We have to test the Syndicate Operatives because instead of Spell Echo, we're going to use Fast Attacks. They might still be good because they're still going to be shotgunning, but won't be as crazy as they were in 3.12. So those are the ranged Spectres that I would recommend using. However, when it comes to melee Spectres, my suggestion is 3 different ones. The early stage melee Spectre would be the Enhanced Vol Fallen. The problem with these is that they only exist in the Vol Outposts. In the Vol Outpost in Delve, so you have to go there and find it, or be on my stream and my Discord community. We have plenty of people playing Summoners that can help you get these Spectres. These Spectres are really crazy. At level 73, they have a baseline HP of 6k, so not too tanky. However, they use Elemental Hit, which works very, very well with the way we're designing a Lich Queen with the Mage Skeletons. Because Mage Skeletons has a random elemental choice. Each skeleton will shoot either a fire projectile, a lightning projectile, or a cold projectile. This is locked on that skeleton until it dies or gets resummoned as another one. So you'll have a mixture of all three elements. Now this means that you'll be using Elemental Weakness as a curse. We're not able to truly benefit from something like Elemental Equilibrium, which is obviously a big downside. I will personally be playing with Elemental Equilibrium because we're not going to need to use EE when it comes to clearing. It's mostly for bossing, which the Spectres will be dealing with, and them will be the main focus of such a build. So we'll actually still be using EE, even though we'll have 30% of our skeletons doing less damage because of that. So with that said, Elemental Hit is pretty crazy when it comes to these Spectres, but they're only existing in Vault Outposts. The better choices is, like I mentioned before, Redemption Sentries melee equivalent or melee version is the Redemption Knights, working the same way, but they're melee, and they are in a position where they are having a conversion into cold, which allows us to use Grip of the Council, which doesn't benefit the skeletons, but benefits Spectres very effectively. Very good HP. At level 73, their base HP is 11k. 84, they're up on 31,000 base HP, which is crazy good. And they are using very good damage, as well as cold damage, allowing us to utilize and be very effective with the Bone Chill support to our Skitterbots for increased cold damage taken, on top of the shock effect of 18%. Now, with these things, you can definitely just wreak havoc across the board. However, they need you to go through the influence modifiers, or the blue, I think it was the blue one, but you have to go for a redeemer influenced maps to actually get a hold of these bad boys. And this goes over to showing you the biggest dick across the board in the community, and that is the Primal Crush Claws. These have been the best melee Spectre available that we've seen in a very long time. These are harvest gated. There are two different ways of summoning these Spectres. You can either get lucky on harvest encounters, or you get yourself a Phantasmal Desecrate, which summons Forgotten Corpses. So if you purchase a Phantasmal Desecrate, put it on your in your hideout and start spamming corpses till you see a Primal Crush Claw, and then summon it, and then just change the Desecrate to a normal Desecrate, and you have the minion. So that's basically the use of Phantasmal Desecrate. You'll be able to summon these corpses. Primal Crusher is there. I'm not sure how big this pool is or how long that's going to take, but once you get one, there you have it. Then make a Spectre bank, call it a day. So these will be the biggest dicks you can use. These bad boys at lower level, they have a base HP of 32.5k. They're not going to die. At higher level, they have 91,000 HP. They're not going to die. The only downside with these is that their base HP, base damage and attack time on their White Swingers is not very good, and that their abilities that we're actually going to be looking to scaling is their Dash Slam and the Abyssal Slam, which all only has a 50% conversion into cold rather than the 75, which means that we're most likely going to go with a 4-green Triad Grip to make sure we get full cold damage of these bad boys, to fully utilize Elemental Equilibrium, to fully utilize Bone Chill from the Skitterbots, and that's most likely the idea of this. I'll be designing that on stream tonight. And yeah, but this is the way we're going to do it. So the main goal is to get yourself a Phantasmal Desecrate to summon these melee Spectres to play with. So a quick TLDR for those of you who think I just rambled on with the words out of my mouth right now. The state of Spectres is basically this. I think the best way to play Spectres right now is to mix it in with Skeletons, going back to the Lich Queen original strategy that was what spawned all of these Spectre builds across the community. But I do believe that pure Spectre builds will work, but they will need to get assisted in the early stage of the leveling. But as you get a higher budget stage, a medium budget over the high budget builds, then you can start using only Spectres, and that should work very well. I still think that the Lich Queen approach will be the superior choice for Spectres specifically. And that's it. It's not much more to say when it comes to Spectres and the minions in general. Bama builds is buffed, zombie enemy weapon, Hop DB, Soul West SRS, untouched, and should still be very good. Niche approaches like Araka's Fang, untouched, just go for it. There's just small nerfs on the 5% lower increased minion damage from the Ascendancy nodes, and that's it. So yeah, there's a couple of other Spectre choices. These are just my personal favorite ones that I've been showing you guys here in this video. If you think I missed something that you think I should take a look at, let me know in the comments below. And like I mentioned in the video, hit the like button, subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay safe, and keep rocking.